Teen Talks. It's been a minute since we got to sit down and talk. Actually, might just have to hold mine. It's been a minute since we got to sit down and talk real estate, life, anything.
Yeah.
This is Matthew Smith, legend, creative finance legend, real estate legend. I know you from my days in California.
Yes.
We went to church together for 6 years.
I think
like
so.
that.
Yeah. I mean, you were you were going to Masters, and I knew of you, and you roomed with Andrew Hartung, I think.
Yep.
And which everybody knows.
Yeah. Everybody who listens knows exactly who Andrew is.
Yeah.
Who I am.
I mean, he is a legend as well. So, in his own right. My son was in your wedding.
Yep.
With his friend Asher.
Yep. That was actually legendary. The honky tonks.
Yes.
We just watched. I don't know if it was our wedding video or I somehow stumbled on it, and it cracked me up even harder this time when I watched it than at the wedding, because I just was remembering them playing. And now Hudson's married. Hayden's not married.
Hayden's not married. Yeah, Hudson's married and living in Texas now.
Yep.
So we brought him out there just last week. So
did the honky tonk show up at Hudson's wedding?
They did not. It's a dissolved band.
Since then,
unfortunately,
has been disbanded.
So you got in at the right time.
We got in when their singles were
really good. They were
millions
amazing.
Of views. And,
really good stuff.
Yeah, it was fun.
I'm not sure how Asher incorrectly identified Tiffany as liking chicken pot pie.
Yes,
which
she still is confused about that. Yeah. Where he claims he knew nothing about her, and then just dubbed her that title of chicken pot pie enjoyer.
Yes, and destroyer. I think
destroyer, enjoyer, something like that.
Yeah, he just kept doing rhymes with that.
Rhymes with her, but today I just wanted to sit down and talk about your new real estate adventure that you started full time. You've been doing it part time for how many years? Probably 3-4 now.
Yeah, I mean, we almost started roughly around the same time and opening our brains to kind of looking at alternatives to retirement accounts and W-2 jobs and things like that. So 2020, I think just prior to the pandemic, I started in on some wealth building type of discoveries. Took some, paid to enter a group that had courses, which I got suckered into or whatever. There's always this,
everyone's bought at least one. If you're in real estate or you're an Amazon, drop shipper, everyone's bought something. Yeah. So it is what it is.
It is what it is, but it was very valuable because there's a lot in there. There's real estate and buying businesses and.
Which one was it? Was it just like a random little one, or
it's called big? Living Legacy now. Okay. It had a different name then. They rebranded. There's not really a well-known individual in it, but in life insurance policies is a means of infinite. Banking, things like that. So that was around the time. And then I picked up a couple of turnkey properties the next year after doing some research and beginning to understand. And that was with, actual legitimate down payments and conventional loans with, good interest rates. And, my desire was to just build the number of doors year after year. The pace that I had doing that wasn't great. When you have to have down payments, it means you have to have more capital, and return rates on rental properties are in the couple of $100 hopefully per month.
If you're looking to retire off of cash flow, it's going to take
a lot of doors. So we kind of plateaued there for a bit, and then of course interest rates went up. So you're doing the cash on cash calculations and you want the 1% rule and all of that, and things just didn't improve there or wasn't as viable. So we held on to we still have those properties, and that's part of my trip is, met with property manager and we are going to visit another one that we have in Kansas City. And just learn what we can learn on them, and make sure we're taking care of our portfolio.
Mm-hmm. So even rewinding a little bit before that, you've been in, it's technically Newhall, right, of Santa Clarita?
Yeah.
You've been in there for a while, and I remember even before I started kind of going down the same path of real estate and all of that, you had done the HELOC, right, when you bought out your mortgage. Yeah. So you were kind of in the creative finance game, for a bit. Was your plan, I was trying to think through it this morning, was your plan to pay off that in like 5 years or 10 years? It was something really aggressive, wasn't it?
Right. The HELOC strategy, you, instead of a 30-year mortgage, you get a first position HELOC, and then you can pay down your principal because at any pace you want to, and you actually use the HELOC as a savings account, and then you end up paying less month after month on your interest, even if the interest rate is higher. There's actually a HELOC calculator out there that allows you to kind of compare it to your amortized mortgage schedule, compare that to a HELOC. If you have more cash flow or more income than expenses, it's a decent strategy, even with interest rates where they're at, as long as you mortgage jump, or you jump from HELOC to HELOC on the lower introductory rates. That's kind of the strategy to use to keep the interest rate low.
Sure.
So yes,
So you did that, and then you got it. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that enabled us to have additional cash because California property, we have a decent amount of equity. Even at I think we have a 80% HELOC. We have cash that we can leverage for things that we can get more profit on than we're paying on the interest rate.
Definitely. Yeah, especially in California. How long ago did you guys buy that house?
We bought it 9 years ago, so it doubled.
It's doubled. I'm sure it's at least.
It's $450. We bought it, and I think it appraised last at $820.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, that's the beauty of California right there. Yeah.
Yes.
The goal for me is one day to buy. I'm back and forth on if I want to buy a house in Santa Clarita or one in like Palm Springs or like Ventura or somewhere on the coast, like a vacation home, and qualified as that. Yeah. And we'll Airbnb it, but I don't want to buy it until I don't care if nobody is in there the entire month. I want to be able to make the payments.
Right.
Whether it's seller financing, traditional, whatever it is, just so that when we go to California, my family has somewhere to stay, and we don't have to stay with in-laws or get our own Airbnb or hotel or whatever. Just something that's going to appreciate that when I go, I can use it, and I don't have to, sleep in one room with 3 kids, 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids.
Right. Yep.
So, but I know Palm Springs has strict Airbnb rules, and it's hard to get into. I don't know if I want to own a property on the beach. I don't know. But we'll see. But that's one of my goals. But it's gonna be probably 5-10 years from now. We'll see.
It's a good goal.
Yeah. The hard part is I know that 10 years from now it's just gonna be way more. It's gonna be 10 years more expensive. Like, but if I get it now, it's just.
Well, but I'll keep an eye out for you.
Yeah, if you find a seller finance one, I'll jump on that.
Well, I've been
you'll
connecting.
Probably jump on it also. That's the problem.
Maybe we can split ownership on it or something. But we have there's people I'm connecting with more out there now that I'm doing this full time, that they're scouring for those opportunities. So it's a potential lead.
Nice.
So,
So you went from, I know you've got kind of a crazy background too, and we don't need to talk about your life for 2 hours, but I remember there was one college event and you had said that you flew planes in Alaska. Is that right? Or is that?
I have an aviation technology with a flight minor. So I'm a certified flight instructor, commercial pilot, instrument rating, and graduated with a degree and that also included aircraft maintenance. And one summer before I was married, went went up to Alaska with some friends that were working up there, and spent several months doing aircraft maintenance, but also in exchange for working on a guy's airplane, he was a flight instructor, and I got my float plane rating. So nice. up in the lakes in Alaska. It was amazing.
So that's like landing on the water.
Landing on the water. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what do you have to do anything to maintain that? Can you still do that?
I'm you're way out of currency.
Gotcha.
And that came with the medical issue I had. Actually the Christmas after my time in Alaska. This was 1997, and I ended up with a stroke and called a right hemiparesis, a paralysis on my right side. So thankfully, I survived that, which can be uncommon, and it just changed the trajectory of my future. I wanted to fly, but the Lord didn't have that for me, so I just kind of worked from the ground up there as a in a shipping receiving at an aircraft parts company, and tried to just work my way up from there.
Yeah, that's a hard trial that you can easily, let bring you down pretty far, and it's cool. Even I'm sure there's how many years is that? 20 years away.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's 20 years of
that.
hindsight of like the Lord has a plan, and I'm thankful for that plan. In the moment, it probably wasn't that easy, but yeah, I mean the Lord takes care of His children, and what we want to do may not be what He has for us, which is what I've definitely learned over the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years since starting to devise my own plans and trying to do things. And that's cool. So you from there you went to that shipping receiving job, and was that the same one that you just quit, or was there a couple in there?
There was, I think, about 5 other companies I worked for, and really just picked up different skill sets in the jobs I moved into, all sort of in the operations realm of businesses, quality control, shipping, receiving, got into manufacturing, inventory control, things like that. Did that for quite a few years until I became the director of operations at a hydrogen sensing manufacturing company. Yeah. And was doing that for actually over 8 years, came up on 9 years this summer, when in parallel I was pursuing these avenues that we spoke of, and something just hit, and I was able to move away from that and choose to focus on different elements of real estate full time. Yeah. And
then you also had the trailer business that you guys tried for a little bit.
Yeah. It's fun being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you just try things and see what happens and
fail or not. Yep. But during the pandemic, trailers were, people wanted to get out and go camping and be away from other people, and so we got the bug to buy a couple of vintage trailers, one which was a total piece, and
not in the greatest of condition.
Not in great condition, probably paid more than we should have, but they were people were fixed on that price, and we picked it up and spent quite a bit of time and money rehabbing it to get it basically rent ready. People come and pick it up and rent it out. That was one of our trailers. The other one was an Airstream. So we did that for greater part of a year and beyond. It was called Vintage Camping Life, and it was focused on just the people interested in camping in vintage trailers. It did okay. It was, not on a basically because myself and my partner, Andrew Hartung's dad, just to call back to the Andrew Hartung.
Old Steve.
Yeah, Steve. We were both doing our W-2, and part of the service was dropping it off and setting it up, and the thematic element.
Dropping it like no matter where they went off?
Within a reasonable...
Within reason,
yeah. So we just didn't have time to do that.
Yeah.
But so we sold the assets and just moved on. Yep. So but that was
Closed
a lot of fun.
Closed the book and got some experience. That's kind of like Airbnb. I mean, it's definitely not passive by any stretch of the imagination. I guess the most passive you can make it is if you have a manager doing it for you, but even then it's a lot of work. All those things are, I love it when people call real estate passive. And I mean, anyone who does real estate knows that it's not passive, and that's not a bad thing necessarily. Like most real estate investors enjoy the work and enjoy the hunt of finding deals, but if you say I've got $100,000 cash and I want to buy rental properties, go. Like something's got to get done, whether it's your agent doing it, your property manager. You still got to run the number. At least I hope you run the numbers. I guess you could get lucky and be okay, but yeah, it's definitely not a passive thing.
Well, there's so many elements to real estate. I mean, my vision of it was, and when people ask me, why I left my job or whatever, and I say I'm in real estate, and I even mentioned the real estate professional tax category, essentially. They're like, oh, are you a realtor or going to become a realtor?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be.
Please step away
no
from
disrespect.
There. No, I don't like realtors. Don't worry. I am a realtor, and I guess caveat that there's good realtors and there's bad realtors.
Absolutely.
And the percentage of bad is probably higher than the percentage of good. But
I mean, I really look for realtors that some people call them unicorn realtors, but the rare ones that are investor friendly. They're not just helping the retail folks get into a house, but they're also helping investors find, deals that have been on market for a good period of time, and where you can get maybe negotiate some type of creative finance or something.
Yeah, and not even just investor friendly, but I would even go as far as to say
friendly. No.
Friendly in general, but also like invest themselves and know the game and know the numbers, and because real investing is different than theoretical investing. You can, until you've owned a property and seen how cash flow for 18 months can leave your pocket in 3 seconds. And that's, no one, that's just life, and that's how it's going to be. But, saying $100 cash flow per month that's okay. Like, that's fine, but it's probably going to be gone within, if you take 5 years, that's all going to add up to probably one thing, like water heater or, so it's just.
Yeah, bad tenant and a rent-ready fix.
Yep. So
sucks the life out of it. Yeah.
And there's nothing. That's just real estate. That's how it is. But like we were talking about, I don't know if we were on there yet, not. But $100 in cash flow is not going to make you wealthy or make you retire or make you. So I like to talk about the non-passive part of real estate, the active part of how do you get your income and money, and then you can put that into the assets that you just don't care about and let them sit and appreciate and build and do all of that while you're still getting your passive, whether that is creative financing or wholesaling or flipping or whatever it is.
Right.
You have to have some kind of income.
Yeah.
At some point,
Right.
Or you acquire the property with somebody else's income, but that's still income. It's just somebody else's income that you're using, or you build it into the deal. There's money involved in some capacity somewhere. So
right, the cash flow, the $100 a month or whatever, is one element, and there's plenty of gurus out there that explain the tax advantages, the fact that you're beating inflation and things like that. There's so much power to owning real estate, and even more if you do work to become a real estate professional, and that is considered in the eyes of the IRS your full-time job, and you log the 750 hours with 500 hours of material participation, then all of that passive income converts to active, and then you're able to write off more into your personal taxes. So there's definitely power beyond just the owning a couple of rentals with a couple $100 a month. Yep.
So you are neck deep in the sub-2 creative financing, that world. Give us a little bit of, I guess there'll be lots of questions involved with it, but I feel like most people who listen to any sort of podcast have heard of Pace Morby or heard of creative financing or sub-2, but what is I guess give me like your biggest pro and your biggest con. And if there's no con, we know you're a guru. I'm just kidding. There's got to be something in there.
Yeah. I mean, there's Pace Morby's doing really well at marketing what he's doing and reaching the masses with some pretty amazing concepts that have been around for quite a while, but making those concepts easier for the average person to understand it is a gift, and he does it through storytelling. The first group that he sort of developed was the sub-2 group, which refers to taking over mortgages subject to, and that's sort of the creative finance group that their focus is acquisitions. So on top of that, he added some other groups. One is, he calls them gators. They're basically individuals that do funding for investors in chunks, where it's typically very short term. It could be a week or a month, mostly, in terms of how that started out. And how did I catch on? I was YouTubing, trying to learn stuff, and at first I was listening. I became an accidental gator. I was listening to a Bigger Pockets podcast, and Pace was on
I listened
with
to that
Brandon.
one.
Did you listen to that one?
Yeah, a couple times. It was good.
It was good.
Yeah.
And again, how he articulates things is pretty great. So he said, if you want an LLC, go to Prime Corporate Services. And this was in the early part of 2022, I believe, that I listened to that podcast. So I did. I called them up and they said, how did you hear about us? And I said, well, Pace Morby. And so I'm sure in their CRM they have a select Pace Morby, and you head down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And so they pitched corporate credit to me, which is not why I called. I wanted an LLC, but I'm like, okay, tell me about this corporate credit. They pitched it, and it's just, okay, utilizing your entity to establish corporate credit that you can use for building your business or funding deals or things like that.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
But I didn't know that. I mean, I was like, hey, this is cool. I'll get corporate credit because it could come in handy. Well, mid-summer of 2022, I get an email from Pace Morby, the team, saying, here's your login. Congratulations, you're a Gator. And what I didn't know until I looked later that year, the end of 2022, I was on a listening to some of his creative finance podcasts, and I listened to his first one about becoming a Gator, and he's like, listen, and it was old. It was about a year old video. If you sign up for Prime Corporate Services for their corporate credit program, I'll add you to the list of Gators. I'm like,
that's how it happened.
So I searched my Gmail and I went, oh my gosh. And so then I had access to all this really valuable content.
So was he sponsoring that, or did they have some deal where, you don't know?
Yeah, maybe.
Some connection where I help you help me, something.
It could have been. He's good at that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that's not what was stated, I don't think.
Yeah.
But it was a way of getting people to take that next step, and it did cost money to do the corporate credit program, but I was sort of ahead of the game, so I became an accidental Gator, and essentially, again, what it is being there as a joint venture investor with people that may not have the capital to do what they want to do. So it could be as simple as a wholesaler doing cold calls, knocking on doors, tough work. And oftentimes, if they're in that position, they don't have the funds for the earnest money deposits for those that haven't beaten the system and are doing $10 EMDs. But
I will never accept a contract with $10 EMD.
There you go.
I hope
That's
no
good.
agents do.
Yeah. So it could be $1,000, could be $5,000, sometimes a lot more.
Depending on the property.
Right. And so we, if on a, let's say on a, they have $1,000 EMD, all joint venture with them, fund it, hold it in place with a protective strategy so I don't lose my money, and make an additional $1,000 off of it. And I do that because they're going to make some type of decent assignment. Maybe they make $10,000 or $12,000, and so what's $2,000 out of pocket for them if they've made $10,000. So that's one of the strategies.
Yeah, it's whether they can, if that is the I can do this deal or I can't do this deal.
Right.
Yeah, I would take that every day of the week.
Yeah. Maybe you have a credit card, you've got $1,000 for one property, but let's say you have 3 or 4 that pop up. Well, what do you do then?
Economy of scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Helps them to build their business. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an interesting concept for sure. I've never done it. I'm very interested in doing it. I know we've talked before about it. The thing for me is the time aspect of finding the deals, and it's the same thing as any other, finding flips. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes calling, it takes connections, it takes network. So what
in terms of wholesaling or
not
finding
funding
individuals?
Funding EMD or funding, JVing on deals, whatever. So what are you doing as far as, acquisitions of finding those deals? You don't have to give your secrets away, but kind of. I mean, you're here, so you might as well tell us.
Well, I mean, it's funny how it goes. I mean, I mentioned I was at the property manager. They were asking if I wanted to do more acquisitions, which I do. But I basically am in a place where I don't want to set aside $30,000 as a down payment. Yeah. So I spoke to them about, hey, how can we have a win-win, and I could acquire properties with little of my own money using creative finance, and how about we help others get into properties, and I do transactional funding. So we talked about EMD. EMD is to hold that property until that wholesaler finds another buyer that's going to take over the EMD and typically pay more. That's how they get their fees. Well, there's also double closes, which in some states a double close is a method, is required because wholesaling is not legal in some states. Double closes are also used as a strategy to hide your assignment. So you're buying and selling the property in the same day to your end buyer, and that costs money. Even as high as $1 million, you could double close a property on, and so I bring in funds for that individual to do that for a small transaction fee for the day of closing, and then it closes a second time on the actual acquisition person's purchase price. So yeah. So
there's
I was pitching that to them. That was my point. But yeah.
So you're basically, at the end of the day, it's the same as any other business. You're trying to make connections. People doing real estate with wholesalers, with property managers, with realtors, and you're more or less educating them on different options for difficult properties, maybe great properties, maybe anything. Just like, this is what I can do. Start looking for this for your clients, or, I feel like every agent I've talked to about, whether it's subject to or owner finance, like full seller financing, they own it outright, or if it's, whatever it is, or land. I've done one land contract. That was our first flip. We just gave him $10,000 down, took over the payments, sold it, and paid him out the $100,000 at the end, and it was great.
Right.
And the reason I did that was funny because it was that same Pace podcast, and I knew absolutely nothing about creative financing outside of, I knew the name creative financing, and I knew that people did it, and then it was kind of like, let's just see if we can figure it out. And I guess we got a little bit lucky because it was a guy who I used to go to church with, who he had moved to the south side of Indy and had moved churches because he was an hour away, and he just wanted to get rid of the property, and he knew me from as a kid, and he's like, hey, this would be great. And I was telling him about it. He's like, hey, let's try it. And he was very gracious throughout the whole thing, as I'm emailing back and forth with the attorney, like, hey, how do I answer this question? Like, what's the like, he'd ask, what happens if this happens? I'm like, I have no idea. Let me ask the guy. So it was very lucky to have an easy back and forth.
Right.
Wrote contracts. We opened a joint bank account. I don't know if I would do that again. So I would make the payments into that account, and then he would pay the mortgage, so I could see that he was paying. Yeah. Because you don't want to pay, and then he just runs with the money, and then it gets foreclosed on, and you're whatever.
Yeah, but you can use third-party services for that.
Yeah. There's a million ways to do it. The only way I knew was like, hey, I mean, we could open an account, to kind of go from there.
That's great.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of stumbled into it too. I haven't done anything. I don't know what I was saying before that, but every time I try to talk to agents, it's very much an educational conversation. And I feel the biggest roadblock is asking the agent to then convey what I've told them on the phone to their client. Yeah. And I've yet to have an agent, and I don't do it all the time. There's a little bit of like 6 months where I was doing it a lot. but not as much anymore. I could never get to the client. It would always get stopped by the agent, which, you know, a good agent would do that. Like, you're supposed to interface for your client. A better agent would say, let's all sit down together. If you can get the best deal for my, you know, my client, if it's going to work out for both parties, why would I not introduce you guys? But I always get stuck on the agent trying to explain it to the client, and then they have some random objection that could easily be handled if I was talking to them. But how do you...
And that's the unicorn agent use as well.
Yeah.
You were going to ask something, but...
I was just going to say, how do you get past that, or have you had experience with that?
So, you know, and circling back to your question, networking, just talking with people about it. Wholesalers through wholesale groups on Facebook. I've worked with hard money lenders, you know, property managers. It's weird how it pops up, and some is with other gators. We're doing a $80,000 EMD we funded on Monday.
Oh wow!
For a property in Georgia that's a $8 million house.
Wow!
And so that was through another gator, and we're all partnering on it. And
so what is the exit for that? Is it a wholesale or a flip?
This is actually the person that represents the acquisition. So the exit is we're getting our funds on the day of closing, and getting paid on the day of closing. So they're holding, I believe, I don't know his complete end game, but he represents some big buyers that are acquiring this large house.
So they needed the EMD, and then they're paying you out by what means at closing?
The financing.
Like, the financing will cover the EMD. The appraisal was high enough to pay the price of the contract plus closing plus paying you guys.
Right.
Wow.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, sweet deal for you. Yeah. That's what. Yeah. Never mind. It always blows my mind, like how you can be a guy who can get that deal. And maybe it's ignorance from me, but how do you not have the money to do the earnest money? And maybe it's because they're doing so many deals. Maybe it is some Joe Schmo who I know my uncle and he's got this guy, and there's a million circumstances. But to me, it's like, I don't know. I maybe I need to break my brain a little bit to like, why would I not borrow it versus getting to the point where I can use my own money? You know, it's that. You know, the parallel track of like, I've been taught to like, you know, financial freedom, like build up your savings, all this stuff, which is not.
Those are good things.
Yeah, those are good things. They're not bad.
Yeah.
I would love to have $500,000 sitting in an account that I can just go drop 80 on earnest money. That'd be great.
Right.
But I guess if you do have the acumen to build up that level of cash, it's almost like you've probably figured out a way to repeat that cycle over and over without using all your money, and then you use your money for what you want to use your money for versus the investment. You know, it's kind of like, I think there's both parallel tracks there.
Right.
But it's just interesting to me, you know.
I think it's a version, you know, the sell for any new real estate investor, and what do you do with $100,000? You know, if you had it.
It's the best use of it.
Yeah, right. So you could buy a $100,000 property, all cash, and then you would be cash flowing pretty well, let's say $1,000 a month. But if you took that $100,000 and split it and bought 5 properties, you would, when you do the math, you cash flow more. So it's that concept on steroids, because you're leveraging other people's money to enable you to do more with and pay a fee to get into something that you may not have been able to before.
I just thought of this, and maybe this is something we should talk about not on a recording, because it's not groundbreaking or anything, but I feel like it'd be a really interesting like YouTube series of like, in 1 year, if I started with $10,000, how many times, like what will I end with? Like how many times can I turn it over? Yeah. Knowing like what you know, what I know, like, or if you gave like, you know, like the undercover boss, or not the undercover boss, the one Grant Cardone did, the billionaire, whatever it was, where they reset them with nothing, you know, with their, but their skills. Right. That same concept of like someone like Pace, or big investor who knows like how to do business stuff, you know, takes 10,000 and what do they end the year with? Where do they put it? How many times do they split it? Or even if you niche it down further of like specifically real estate, how many times can you, what do you end with? How many times can you turn it? That'd be an interesting concept. Because even what you said, like buying a house cash for $100,000 that's great. Like you had $100,000, now you have an asset worth 100,000. Say it's straight up 100,000.
93,000 after
whatever it is.
Fees.
Yeah. Those properties that cost that are not exactly great properties. You know? People love to talk about Indiana because you can go to Indiana, buy a $60,000 property, cash flow $200, and you'll sell it for $2. Like it's just there's a lot of nonsense out there about what Indiana is. Granted, I've got 10 emails in the front page of my mailbox with $50,000 properties, but they need a lot of work. You know, it's just it's just funny how the flyover states have all this junk that you can just buy for cheap and cash flow. Anyways, subsiding from that, my investing strategy has changed a lot over the years because, like, at the end of the day, like 10 years from now, I want to own like 25 properties paid off and then just like step aside and do something else. I don't know if that'll actually happen. But like the idea of, debt leverage and how do you split your money and how many times can you do this, that, or the other. I want to do all that when I'm active in the game of real estate and like hustling right now because I can use debt to split my money. But then when I want to stop, I want to own them all outright because my doomsday is 25. I have 25 houses. All of them go vacant in 1 month, or they all default. None of them are paying. Whatever the situation is, you sell one of those properties and you make, call it even just $100,000. How many times can how many months can I float on $100,000? Because theoretically, if you have 25 properties paid out, say you're making whatever $1,000 per property, that's a lot of money per month. And if you're if my family's living off of that and that all goes away, how long can I float off $100,000? If I've got all those paid off, probably have my primary paid off too, I would guess. So our bills are probably low. So like it's just that doomsday scenario of if the market absolutely crashes, if all my tenants stop paying, and if I'm 80-20 leveraged on every property and I go to sell one and I make $10,000 or $5,000 or it's a way different story. But I don't even know what we're talking about at this point. We're just rambling. But
well, you're talking about a YouTube series.
Yes,
of $10,000.
Yes. That's
but what if you did it? You did that series and it was no money. Like you had no
start
money
with
to invest,
none, and where do you get to?
Yeah.
That's level 2. Yeah. But it would be interesting just to see because I'm very intrigued by it. Of how many times can you turn your money over and how quickly of that timeline and what people will pay, and it is very intriguing. And that's when you get into the fun, the fun of real estate. And it's not necessarily fun because you're making $1 million, whatever. But for me, it's the fun of like the creative thinking and the problem solving and the puzzle. And
there's a lot of that.
Yep.
For sure. Yeah.
We should do that. I think
sounds good.
I think that's on
good.
the horizon. But tell us a little bit about, I know you had the big deal that you referenced a little bit that kind of was the catalyst to quitting a little bit when you went on Pace Morby's podcast. We'll tag it here too so people can go tag it and so people can go listen to it. But tell us a little bit about that, how you got it with those numbers, all that.
Well, for the last year I've been doing funding in the double close strategy and another strategy which Pace calls the Morby method, which is basically you're transactionally funding the down payment and then it converts to a seller finance note. I've been doing that a number of times, and at the end of last year, I had a couple of conversations with people about helping them to get into those properties on their own with none of their own money. So I was working with one individual in Texas, and we were talking about, hey, we should get properties that are, 50 to 60 cents on the dollar of as is value and of what someone would lend on, and double close it so that we can leverage the what you might the spread, the assignment, the difference between the first purchase price and the second purchase price. You take that spread and you distribute those funds to cover the down payment, to cover closing costs, taxes, insurance, and then whatever's left we would split. So Someone talked to me. Someone said, "Hey, I've got this property that I'm in Denver. It's a quadplex. I'm selling for $820,000, or let me know if you have any buyers." And I said, "Okay, I'll sort of look. I'll keep that in mind. What's your acquisition price?" And he said it was $800,000. So he was going to make $20,000 on it, which is good.
Yeah.
And I basically said, okay, so what would you say if I could help you get into the property with none of your own money, and actually we walk away with some cash on it? And I asked that after he told me that it appraised at 1.1 as is.
He already had done an official appraisal.
He had a desktop appraisal from a connection.
Yep.
And so he knew what it was worth, and it was a ARV of 1.6 million. So amazing with good rent rates in the area and stuff. So what we did is I bought it from the the property owner on my entity, and bought it for $800,000, and then created a purchase and sale agreement with him for $1.1 million, and we scheduled it to close on the same day, both transactions. And I used some other funders to pay for the $800,000 piece, and the money had to be all separate and distinct. And so I also used another transactional funder for the down payment. But the difference between those two purchase prices was $300,000. So let's say I actually did find that property myself, and I did double close it, so he wouldn't know how much I paid for it. That's a $300,000 spread that I could have made, but I didn't find the property, and I was like, hey, let's creatively get you into it. And so we did that. In the early part of January, we created the contracts, we set it up. There was a lot of hiccups that we had to go through in terms of issues with the property and getting the official appraisal in on time and getting the loan in place, all to hit that target close date and be able to fund the property.
He got a hard money on that, or was it just
he got a hard money because he was rehabbing it. Yeah. So that is definitely important. Hard money loans are work better for the strategy. But we did the math. I created a calculator for him to figure out how much we would make after all our expenses, and it he was originally looking at like either a 90 or 95% loan. We were going to walk away with like 150 each initially when we first did it. After the lender looked at it, they went down to, I think, 80%.
Typical.
Yeah.
They like to make it sound like they'll
high
give you
expectations.
Yeah.
That's
you
one
in
of
the
the
door,
lessons
get you
learned,
doing
really.
paperwork.
Absolutely. So after we on the day we closed, we had money to pay back, obviously the A to B funder. We had money to pay back the transactional funder for the down payment.
And what did the A to B percentage equate to? Like, how much did they make?
They made a percent. Yeah, I mean, I charged 2% total, but I took 1% off of that.
Gotcha.
And then, I also funded the earnest money as well. So I charged 10% for that.
So you charged yourself, theoretically.
Essentially.
You just took a little bit more of the pie because you were the one, instead of going and finding someone else to do it, you put it in and you put more on the table, took more off the top.
Yes. Yeah. Prior to the ending kind of calculations on how much is left over.
Did the 800 have to be cash? Like show as cash in someone's account, and they had to actually wire it?
It had to actually be wired.
So 1% was $80,000.
8,000.
Good math, Josh. Yeah, 8,000. So they made for them
expensive.
That would be expensive. But for them, $8,000 for quintessentially just owning money.
Yes. Yeah, same day transaction. Yeah. And these people
wired in, gets wired right back.
We do this as often as possible, because if you can transact at 2% every couple of days, then you're really killing it annually.
Oh yeah. Small wins add up to big ones.
Yes. So after everything settled, the title company was given the funding assignments, instructed as to who was to get paid. And
you got to trust that title rep. I tell you what.
Yes. And they were great. They were really great. And I walked away with, $87,000.
Yeah.
From
that's
the deal.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a big win. And that really kind of gave me some, working with the team I did, there was connections to Pace, and they said, hey, we want to get you on a podcast to talk about it. And Pace is really trying to promote others beyond, himself, like really push to connect people with people that have done good things. And so I had the, opportunity to just get on a 15-minute Zoom with him, and it was great. It was, he wasn't actually expecting
that
what
level
I took.
Of success.
Yeah. He thought it was a transactional fund. Typical Gators will make, a couple of percent, and then the EMD and et cetera. And he said, how much do you walk away with? And he just, blew his mind. So then he gave me some, promoted me within the group on our Facebook group, and it brought more connections, more people that were interested in learning more and helping. And so that's been kind of the path I've been headed down, and that's where the W-2 was kind of getting in the way. Very, very full schedule with my former job, and I just had to make that decision. Do I push on this and grow it more, or do I, focus on my W-2? And we said, now's the time to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Have you checked in on that property? Have you kept in touch with that guy? Like, has he? Yeah,
we stay in touch quite a bit. He's leveraged the strategy a number of times.
Since then, or before you?
Since then.
So he's all in on it.
He's definitely sold on it. And
was that his first one?
That was his first. Yes. Yeah,
gotcha.
It was. Yeah. And then we're gonna go see it in a couple of days as well. So
nice.
We're gonna go just for kicks and giggles, see what we did.
Yeah. It's cool. Yeah. It's like a landmark on your historic map for Matt.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that's a deal. And I mean, the portfolio that we sold last year had a billion problems that came with it, and I can only imagine when you're trying to educate 15 different parties on the concepts that you're doing. I guess this is an interesting question without any legal implications at all. Were you trying to, did the lender have full disclosure for what you were doing, or was it they kept in the dark? Or should we not go down that path? Anyways, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Some lenders do require and source the funds,
Yeah.
and those are typically the lenders we don't want to work with.
I mean, and at the end of the day, there's ways to also make that legitimate. You could have created an LLC with the person who had the money.
There are
and
ways.
They're technically a part of, that's sourced then. Because then all they have to do is now prove how they got it. So as long as they're not getting it illegally, So there is, there's nothing illegal being done. It's just working within the rules of real estate and lending. They've got their rules. And hard money is a way, different animal than conventional. Conventional's got the Fannie Freddie that they follow. Hard money is kind of like, it can be any Joe Schmo with $10 million or whatever amount of money. They can technically do hard money lending with their terms, So the bigger guys have their own set of rules that they play by. And like you said, you can work with the people who understand what you're doing. And that's crazy.
And in this case, it was really just to have a distinct set of funds for the down payment. The Morby method converts that down payment to a seller finance note. In our situation, we were just basically paying it back.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't that maybe strain on the equity with a second position lien on the property, which is a typical scenario for that.
And I guess, would you want to be in that second position because that's more of like a long-term play where you might be realizing more interest for a longer play, or is it just the deal doesn't, it's in order, because not every deal can be a home run, Is it a way to get more deals where, base hit is I just end up doing a seller finance note for the down payment and then get paid out over a year, 5 years, 10 years?
Yeah.
Instead of being able to get all, obviously you would want your cash all on that same day if you can.
Maybe some people don't.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're in the scenario where you actually are working with the owner of the property to sell or finance some or all of the property, let's say you can get a loan, and then but you don't want to put that cash out for the down payment. That's where you have that conversation with the seller and you say, what is your need? Do you need all the cash, or would you like a $1,500 check every month? And so you set those terms up in a way that when you do all the numbers like you would with any other property acquisition, it works well for you, and you're not paying more for the property than you're getting on cash flow. So you negotiate terms that work for the deal.
Sure.
And it benefits the seller, hopefully. That's really, you're trying to do win-win. So you want to do win-win because you want to get them in a place where they now don't have to pay as much in capital gains, or they don't need the cash, and they would love a check every month, and maybe there's interest tied to it.
The problem that I seem to run into too is if the seller has talked to a realtor who's given them a net sale sheet or a net sale sheet or whatever you want to call it, estimate sheet, they're like, I know I can make, if I just sell it traditionally, I'm going to make $60,000. And it's that same concept of, would you rather have a penny, today, or $1 million and whatever. There's a million different scenarios people play out. Like if I give you a penny every day versus, $1 million now, what would you rather have? The instant gratification of, hey, I got $50,000, I can do a whole lot with that. Pay off this, and it may not even be bad. Like, I'm going to go buy a Mustang. It might be pay off my student loans, pay off this credit card, do whatever, versus, a $1,500 a month payment, when in all reality, that might be better for them. You just have to get over that roadblock.
You have to get over the roadblock.
I've talked to this agent and they think they can sell it for this. And it's like, okay.
Well, and so you go after something where the days on market have been quite a while. So now they're getting discouraged and they need to get out of that property. And you can say, well, cash wise, if I buy this house, to make it worthwhile to me, I need to be at X number, 80% of.
And they've probably already gotten
price.
Those from.
They've gotten it from
100 other people.
What if I buy it at your asking price, or maybe even a little bit more than your asking price, but you do this for me? So they get a good chunk of cash and they pay off the mortgage if they had one, but then they're also getting additional money. So it's not like they're getting a little bit of both. They're getting some cash in some cases, if that's their situation. The other situations are they're distressed. They can't afford their home, and so you help get them out of it without going into foreclosure. And that's not even my. We're talking sub 2. That's not even my avenue. I love that, and I'm working on doing that more. But really, I'm helping to provide the funds to make those things happen.
And at the end of the day, at the end of the day, most businesses in real estate all comes back to leads too. I mean, you have to have somebody to do this with. You have to have, whether it's a distressed seller or someone who's like got a $10 million property and knows how money works and is like, I'd love to do a seller finance note. Whatever it is, you have to be able to get those leads. You know, and the thing that I've noticed, and this is why sometimes it feels like sub 2 and creative financing has broken real estate, is because like I've got 9 properties for sale right now, and I have 1 million offers from creative finance people. Hey, I'd buy it for this. Okay, like no, we don't. That's not too low of a cash price. Well, have you heard? Like maybe I could do something that helps you and me. And I'm like, I don't want creative financing, like because our guy doesn't want it. So it's like turning off the investor side and turning on the realtor side. It's funny because I talk to those realtors and I'm trying to convince them to do it, but then when I am on the sales side, it's like the guy I'm selling for does not want to carry anything, doesn't want seller financing, doesn't want sub 2, doesn't want this. What he owns 4,000 properties. He just wants to get rid of them. He's gonna, even if he takes a loss, he's like, I'll write it off on my tax. Like it doesn't matter. He's just selling them. So it's just purely pay for it this way. He'll do what he calls seller financing, but he also has basically a hard money lending arm that he's like, just push you to that and he'll make interest on it. So but it's just funny because you get and they're not D class properties. They're probably C class. So like they're not the bottom of the barrel, but just kind of that area, you just get those offers all the time. And it's good on you. Like you're out there, you're sending emails, you're analyzing properties, but as on the other side of it, it's like I have to filter through all of that to just get to something worthwhile.
Right.
It just depends on who you're working with, and everything's got a scenario. But
yeah. No, that's true. Yeah.
This has been great.
Good to hear the other side of it. For
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it is funny because I am on the investing and the realtor side, and even just selling like a primary home residence, you'll get people calling because there's like, it's been on for 45 days, and you'll start getting those phone calls. It's like, I mean, everyone has those markers for their alerts that come up for 30, 45, 60, 90, whatever. So you can anticipate when it hits that tick mark, you're going to start getting phone calls as the realtor of people asking for a cash offer, asking for creative financing or whatever. But
I guess is the individual that's trying to sell being realistic about their expectations.
This one specifically? Well, yes and no. I mean, like, I mean, they were selling it they wanted to sell it as a portfolio first, and their price was, it's based on a cap rate. It's based on what it can make for you on the year. And that's what he wants to sell it as. But he's also calculating the cap rate based off of his numbers a little bit more than realistic numbers, without management, without people who budget for vacancies and expenses and all this stuff. It's he's like taxes, mortgage payment, purchase price,
because that's his way of doing
that's his. So like, his cap rate is not somebody else's cap rate, even if technically that is the cap rate. People are like, take that versus this, and so we got offers on it as a portfolio just lower than what he wanted to take. And when you're working with someone who's got that many properties, it's kind of like, this is the number. So. But regardless, we'll see what happens with them. Just kind of funny that you do see it on both sides. And
for sure.
And
really, that's not a savvy investor is probably not the target individual unless unless they want to do that as well. It's a person where there is a need, and so the people that are calling you or pinging you don't know the need, and they're just pitching the creative finance. So,
and it's even if that's what you're doing for right now, until you get to that distress sale, it's always good to be on the elliptical machine or the treadmill, like practicing the lingo, getting reps, analyzing the properties. So, kudos to them. At the end of the day, I'll probably call them at some point and say, "Hey, can I help manage your properties once you get them?"
There you go.
Which is what it should be doing. But, cool. Yeah, it's been great. It's been great catching up and hearing the story, and I'm sure
same here.
We haven't had anybody on here yet that did creative financing, I guess.
There we go.
Outside of my first deal, so you'll be the first. We'll blow up to 1 million views because of this. So
I'm sure.
But it's been great. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Any closing thoughts?
I mean, you know what? Not really. It's just good catching up.
Yeah.
And I love having this conversation. And thanks for having me on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks, man.